Clean up your room now. Do you think you're in a position to take a break? Saying this, Andy splashed beer on me. My body felt sticky, with the distinct smells of beer wafting around. Surprised by his sudden action, I stood in shock, and Andy hurled more words at me. What should I do? I don't understand what Andy expects from me. Lost for words at that moment, a voice echoed from the computer. The instant I recognized whose voice it was, Andy, whose face had been red with anger, suddenly tensed up and collapsed to the floor. My name is Karen, and I'm 33 years old. I work as an administrator at a local company, dealing with various documents and battling numbers daily with my calculator. Even though I thought about utilizing the computer more, I didn't have the standing in the company to suggest it. I had to consider carefully around my seniors, reluctantly attending company parties. My mental health was nearing its limit. This number here, there's another mistake. I'm sorry, you've been making more mistakes lately. Be careful. I understand. The fatigue led to increased errors, and my confidence in my work diminished significantly. Perhaps quitting this job might be the best choice. That's when a man from outside started visiting our company. That man was Andy, who would later become my spouse. It was easy to see Andy's gentle attitude at first glance. Even when I was just greeting him, he treated me warmly and kindly. Over time, I became completely smitten with Andy. Even so, I lacked the courage to express my hidden feelings to him. I thought it was just me being infatuated, assuming Andy probably didn't have any special feelings for me. However, a few months after Andy started visiting the company, he surprisingly showed active interest in me. Dinners after work led to us dating, and after about 2 years, we chose to get married. After getting married, I resigned from my job to start a new life with Andy. When choosing our new home, we visited many properties, seeking a place we both liked. Quitting my job, I looked forward to spending wonderful days with Andy. That thought brightened my spirits. However, the daily life that was supposed to await us was different from what I had imagined. A month after our wedding, I started sensing something off about Andy. Welcome home, Andy. You're back early. Yay? He didn't look at me and his greetings were curt. This behavior, so different from before, concerned me. Andy seemed out of spirits and slightly irritated. Are you okay? You look tired. Huh? Yay. Whether it was fatigue or some other reason, his mood seemed different. At that time, I simply attributed it to exhaustion and didn't think too much of it. However, the next day and the day after that, Andy's behavior has still remained the same. Not only in his words and demeanor, but also in his actions, like coming home late without any notice. His attitude towards me gradually became more careless. I wondered, did I say something to upset Andy? I kept mulling over my own actions, words, and thoughts about Andy. While I was lost in these thoughts, time passed without any change. The situation dramatically shifted a few months after Andy began acting differently. Suddenly, Andy started hurling harsh words at me. One evening at dinner, without eating a bite, Andy said to me, "Karen, do you get it?" Get what? His statement was so abrupt and lacking a clear subject that I didn't know how to respond. I asked Andy to clarify what he meant. Without hesitation, he replied, "Your cooking tastes awful." Awful? Really? Yay. Haven't you noticed? I wish you knew how I feel, having to eat such durable food every day. Throughout our relationship, I frequently cooked for him, but he had never criticized my cooking like this before. And he used to enjoy the meals I made, often expressing his appreciation. So, the thought that he found my cooking unpalatable was completely unexpected. But you used to enjoy my cooking, I remarked. Did I? Witnessing my surprised expression, Andy burst into laughter. Once he finished laughing, he left his knife and fork on the table, then headed to the bedroom. Staring at the untouched food in front of me, I was overwhelmed with mixed emotions. I paused, reflecting on Andy's words. Was he silently enduring my food all this while, or has my cooking skill got worse? No matter how much I pondered, I couldn't reach a satisfactory conclusion. But one thought crossed my mind, considering Andy's recent behavior and his remarks. Perhaps he doesn't love me anymore. I used to think he was just tired, but his recent actions are clearly excessive. The person Andy who I knew would have been upfront if he felt tired or upset. That must be it. If that's the case, I can't help but think I must have done something to offend him. However, I can't recall doing anything of the sort. My doubts about Andy grew. 2 more months passed. Andy became even colder. The warmth and kindness he showed when we were dating disappeared entirely. He began to snap at me daily, showing his irritation over tiny matters. Did you even clean? What? Clean? Yes. The bathroom isn't clean. The living room is a mess too. I always try to keep the house clean. I vacuum and organize my home every day and do my best to maintain it. I wonder how much more cleaning I need to do to satisfy Andy. What should I really do? As I wallow in disappointment, Andy showers me with even more criticism. Of all the hurtful words, what stung the most was, why did I ever marry a woman like this? Was his past love for me just an illusion? I felt tears trickle down my cheek at the thought. Wait, are you crying? Hope that's not just an act. Previously, he would have comforted me. Now, all he offers are these cold words. Andy scoffed and headed to the bedroom. We used to share the bed, but lately I've been sleeping elsewhere more often. The living room sofa has become my bed. I've felt belittled and ignored by Andy. Yet, I lacked the courage to end our relationship. I still believed in him somewhere deep down. Unfortunately, my feelings went unnoticed, and Andy's behavior only worsened. Hey, where's the food? He'd ask, only to criticize it next, saying, who can even eat this? I've suggested eating out several times, but he never agreed. He never told me why. The moment he returned from work, he'd complain about the dirt at the entrance or the state of the bathroom and demand food with sharp words. When I noticed the change in his behavior, I tried to pinpoint the cause. But eventually, I realized he was probably just using me as an outlet for his stress. The inconsistencies in his actions and the way he vented had come to that conclusion. I understand working somewhere can be tiring for Andy, but I'm not a robot. Constant complaints take their toll on me. Andy, I need to talk to you about something, I said with determination. I'm stressed from always hearing complaints from you. I know work tires you out, but taking it out on me isn't fair. He looked at me, surprised. What are you talking about? I mean every word. Every time you come home from work, you lash out at me. But I'm doing my best too. He smirked as if mocking my words. But the moment I finished speaking, his face turned red with rage. You're just a housewife. But the house isn't even clean, and your cooking is terrible. Why shouldn't you get complaints? I can't stand seeing you so relaxed. If there's a specific problem, tell me. I'll try to improve. No point telling you won't change anything. You should figure out what you're doing wrong. He kept dodging my questions. From this conversation alone, it was clear he only saw me as an outlet for his stress. Expressing my feelings only made our relationship even more strained. The words grew harsher and the cold attitude became more prevalent. The happy times were now a thing of the past. I longed for those moments in silence, as my sighs only grew deeper. Amidst such days, I received a call from an unexpected person. It was from my mother-in-law. We don't usually communicate so often, so I was curious and answered the phone. Hello? Karen, how have you been? I could feel the warmth in my mother-in-law's voice even through the phone. After a bit of chit-chat, she made a proposition. Wait, handmade crafts? Yes, Karen. Didn't you say that you create handmade items? I became interested in it. Would you be willing to teach me? Actually, I had been enjoying handmade crafts as a hobby. I would gather materials and tools and immerse myself in the work whenever Andy was not around. I remembered to tell this to my mother-in-law once, but hadn't expected her to remember. Of course, I'd love to. That conversation led to us speaking more frequently over the phone. At first, it was just regular calls, but as we wanted to show our works and explain the materials in detail, we started video calling. Though we don't live too far apart, it's a little bit hard to visit each other regularly. At the agreed upon times, I'd sit in the room filled with my crafting tools, and we'd craft while video chatting. The weariness of my heart, caused by Andy's behavior, felt somewhat eased during these chats with her. How has Andy been lately? I rarely hear from him, so I'm curious. Oh, he's fine. That's good to know. I hadn't shared the recent troubles with Andy with my mother-in-law. I didn't want to worry her. Our time together allowed me to forget about him for a while. Andy remained the same, and I continued to struggle with that, but I kept that hiding from her. However, one day a few weeks after we started video calling, an unexpected thing happened. After I prepared food and cleaned the house, I was video chatting with my mother-in-law. Suddenly, the door slammed open. Andy? I turned to see Andy standing near the door, holding something. He seemed completely unaware of the ongoing video call and slowly approached me. What are you sneaking around doing in here? Did you finish cleaning? What about the laundry? I've already done that. You saw me when I was doing house stuff, didn't you? I didn't. Well, I was busy with housework. Andy had been engrossed in watching TV in the living room, so his reply wasn't unexpected. You always watch TV. What? You're annoying. Andy yelled. Clean this room now. Do you think you can just take a break? And then he threw something he had been holding at me. I realized something immediately. The smell. It was beer. My clothes were soaked with beer and became sticky. Andy, looking amused at the scene. From this sudden accident, I was so shocked that I lost my words. Once you understand, get on with the task. Then, he kicked the books that were piled nearby. Andy's displeased laughter echoed throughout the room. I said nothing, just staring at the books that had been drenched with beer. At that moment, an unexpected voice rang out. Is that all you want to say? From the direction of the computer, a familiar male voice sounded. Wait, Dad, the voice was Annie's father. My father-in-law. What are you doing? I saw everything, yelling at Karen and even throwing beer at her. What were you thinking? It's not what you think, Dad. It's a misunderstanding. Andy's once intimidating presence faded, replaced by fear, as he heard his father's words. My father-in-law's anger didn't subside. A misunderstanding? What do you mean, a misunderstanding? Seems like this isn't the first time, huh? Aya? What were you thinking? When did you become like this? My father-in-law seemed to be disappointed. Surely, it's surprising to see your own child act this way. With Andy being silent beside me, my father-in-law made me an offer. Karen, would you come over to our place? Now? Right away? Yes, I'm worried about you staying with Andy there. If it's okay with you, I'll come to pick you up right away. His offer took me by surprise. But thinking about it, it was unpredictable what would happen if I stayed alone with Andy in this situation. Are you sure it's okay? No problem at all. Wait for me. Andy, if you harm Karen anymore, I'll never forgive you. With that, he ended the call. I hurriedly prepared to go to my father-in-law's house, waiting at the entrance for him to arrive. Andy was visibly unsettled but didn't do anything to me. After a while, my father-in-law's arrived. The moment my father-in-law opened the entrance door, Andy's face showed an unprecedented level of fear. It was clear he was afraid of his father. Andy, you better reflect on your actions tonight. You understand? Dad, please, forgive me. What are you saying? Apologize to Karen, not me. Remember that and think hard. After scolding Andy, my father-in-law escorted me outside. Though I changed my clothes, I hadn't had time to shower and still felt sticky. My father-in-law gently wrapped a towel around me and guided me into the car. We soon arrived at his house where my mother-in-law welcomed us. Karen, are you all right? Yes. I'm sorry. My mother-in-law warmly hugged me and led me to the bathroom. Take your time. Here are towels and a change of clothes. Thank you so much. All of a sudden, various things happened, and my emotions were in turmoil. After getting out of the bath, I changed into the clothes that were prepared for me and headed to the living room. My father-in-law sat with a serious expression, and my mother-in-law looked anxious. Thank you for everything. You're welcome. Was the water temperature okay? Told by my mother-in-law, I sank into the sofa as well. Karen, can you tell us what happened? So that wasn't the first time, was it? No, it wasn't. Please tell us, Karen. Not knowing where to start, I carefully chose my words. My in-laws patiently waited for me to speak. After a while, I explained events after our marriage and why I hadn't confided in them earlier. They listened intently to every word. So that's why it came to this. You should have told us sooner. It would have been okay. I didn't want you to worry. I'm sorry. I understand how you feel, Karen. You shouldn't have kept silent about someone like him. Yes, I'm sorry. Even though they gently scolded me, I felt it was because they genuinely cared about me. After my confession, there was silence. My in-laws seemed deeply in thought, and it wasn't a moment to speak lightly. After a few minutes, my father-in-law broke the silence. Karen, do you still love Andy? Pardon, I have a feeling he'll make the same mistakes again. For your sake, I think it's best if you divorce him. Decisions like this are best made quickly. My mother-in-law beside him seemed to agree. Divorce Annie. I never expected such a suggestion from his parents. Indeed, divorcing might be easier, but could he really never change? The fact remained that I loved him, and I felt torn. They both waited silently for me to decide. After some contemplation, I made up my mind. I will divorce Annie. All this time, I had tried to work things out and made suggestions, but he never took any of them to heart. If we continued as a married couple, there's no doubt he would continue treating me coldly. That's what I believed. Seeing my decision, relief was evident on their faces. After talking to my in-laws, I decided to get a divorce. I can finally distance myself from Annie. While there was a moment I hoped for his change of heart, the overwhelming feeling when deciding to get divorced was relief. The next week, holding papers including an affidavit of the defendant from the court, I went to our house with my in-laws. When I rang the doorbell, I soon heard footsteps from inside, and Andy appeared. Karen! And Dad and Mom. Seeing his in-laws right in front of him, Andy clearly looked disappointed. He seemingly hadn't anticipated that I wouldn't come alone after the previous events. We entered the house and sat on the sofa. My in-laws sat on either side of me. Karen. Andy appeared flustered, without any apology. Facing to Andy, I began to speak. Andy, let's get a divorce. Eh? Divorce? I've thought about it. I don't have the courage to envision a future with you anymore. Even if we live together again, you probably won't change. And after a while, you'd forget what happened before and repeat the same mistakes, right? That's not true. Can you firmly assert that? You haven't even properly apologized for what happened up until last week. You're just paying lip service, not showing any genuine regret. I'm sorry. Andy, startled by my words, apologized, but it was too late. I no longer had any forgiving feelings towards him. It's too late for everything. Now, please read carefully through papers from the court. With my in-laws by my side, I could speak to Andy with confidence. But why would you say that? What were you thinking after all that happened last week? You didn't even apologize to Karen. It seems you never even imagined the possibility of divorce. If you understood the gravity of your mistakes, you wouldn't be so shocked by the mention of divorce. Yes, I realize I did something wrong, but it's not serious enough for a divorce. You thought it wasn't serious enough. Really? That's unbelievable. In my words, Andy seemed to freeze again. His earlier assertiveness was gone. In the end, although he looked troubled, Andy agreed to divorce. Not once did he express genuine remorse. By the way, as I packed my things to leave the house, I posed a question. Why did you start treating me so poorly after we got married? You weren't like this when we were dating. Hesitating, Andy answered, I didn't want you to look down on me. That's all. You thought I was looking down on you? Did I ever make you feel that way? No, you didn't. Stop imagining such absurd things. It's unbelievable. I understand. I told Andy this, and then left the house with my in-laws. I knew I would never return to that place again. I loved our house, so I felt a tinge of sadness. After finalizing the divorce, I stayed with my in-laws. Being a housewife made me not enough money to start a new life alone. My in-laws offered for me to stay with them. At first, I felt uneasy, but as time passed, I got used to the new life and started to enjoy doing handmade crafts with my mother-in-law. Throughout that time, I kept receiving messages from Andy, who seemingly couldn't let go. However, after my father-in-law relayed a message from my phone saying, I'm cutting ties with you, the communication from Andy stopped entirely. I suspect he hadn't anticipated that I'd be living with his parents. Maybe he thought that by keeping in touch after our divorce, we could get back together again. It felt like he was looking down on me. It confirmed that my decision not to continue our married life was the right one. I'm genuinely grateful to my in-laws for suggesting the divorce. A year has passed since the divorce, and while working part-time, I lead a fulfilling life on my own. I felt bad about relying too much on my in-laws, which is why I decided to be independent. Even after leaving their home, my relationship with my in-laws remains strong, and they continue to support me. We may not be related by blood, but they welcomed me with the warmth of a real family. My goal now is to show my gratitude towards them. I wonder how I can bring them joy. Every day, I live with a heart full of gratitude for my in-laws.